Okay, so we're starting here on page 14. And actually the first word in this page, hunk, is the object of the sentence. So I would start with the, you could start with the subject, which is libido, and that's an archaic spelling, as we've often seen in Sallust, for libido, meaning a lust or a desire or a passion, something like that. And it's being described by the word maxima, which is another archaic spelling for maxima. So a very great passion. And then Latin follows this with a genitive, right? In English, we would say a passion for doing something. Latin says a passion of doing something. So a very great passion of rei publicae capiundae, of capturing the republic, of taking over the state. Now you'd expect the word for the republic or the state to go into the accusative case because it's the object of the verb of capturing, but actually it's in the genitive, and that's because of something that we call gerundive attraction, where the noun is attracted into the case of the verb, of the gerundive verb. So the whole phrase, in other words, goes into the genitive case, a passion of taking over the republic. In English, we would say a passion for taking over the republic. And the main verb is invaserat, pluperfect tense, had invaded or had entered into. And then the object of that is hunk, which is the first word in the sentence. It means him or this man, and it refers to Catiline. And just as a bit of context, Sulla, okay, is this figure of Roman history who fought a civil war between 83 and 82 BC. And, you know, so this is about 20 years before the events that we're reading about, because the Catilinarian conspiracy was in 63 BC. And Sulla was elected dictator in November of 82, and he ruled Rome with absolute power until he retired into private life in 80 BC after holding a second consulship. And Sulla's rule was famous for having lots of proscriptions, which means executions or assassinations of his enemies. So the idea seems to be that once Sulla has successfully become a dictator, this gives ideas, this gives an idea to other people who would like to become dictators themselves. So one of them is Catiline, who fails, but then of course there are others as well who actually succeed, right? So for example, Julius Caesar could be regarded as a more successful version of Catiline, even though, you know, their methods were very different. Julius Caesar actually succeeded for a little while in taking over the state. So then we have this word neque, nor, and then the main verb is actually habebat, literally, nor did he have. Now this bit's rather difficult to translate, literally, nor did he have anything of a thought, quicquam pensi. So pensi is the genitive of pensum, meaning a thought or a consideration. So literally, nor did he have anything of consideration. In other words, nor did he care, or nor did he regard it as a matter of importance, by what means, quibus modis, he would accomplish this, ad sequeretur, he would achieve this, he would obtain this. Dum, now dum plus subjunctive here means so long as, or provided that, and it's subjunctive because we're sort of imagining a possibility rather than talking about a fact, provided that he was preparing, pararet, despotism, regnum, or dictatorship, or power, or rule, for himself, sibi. So, in other words, Catiline doesn't care how he gets power, so long as he gets power. Right? That's the only thing he cares about, is getting this power. Okay. And then in the next sentence, the subject is animus, which means his spirit, his mind, and it's described by the adjective ferox, right? So his fierce spirit, agitabatur, imperfect passive, was being disturbed or agitated or vexed or annoyed or something like that. Magis magisque, more and more. In dies, every day. By, so here we have ablative, by his lack in opia of rei familiaris, genitive case. Res familiaris is a phrase that literally means the familial thing, but in English we would say family wealth, probably. So he's annoyed by his lack of family money. And also by a conscientia, ablative again, a consciousness or an awareness of his crimes, scelerum, genitive plural of scelus, quae utraque, literally which both, or in English we would say both of which, he had increased, auxerat, pluperfect of augeo, augere, he had increased by those arts or by those practices, eis artibus, which, quas, I mentioned above, right? Memoravi supra. So Sallust's diagnosis of Catiline's agitation or frustration is that he's frustrated by two things. One is a lack of money, and Sallust has already told us that he spent far too much and then ended up trying to take other people's money. And also, secondly, guilt, right? Conscientia scelerum. Sallust is presenting Catiline as tormented by guilt. Now, we don't know really whether that's true or not, but certainly that is Sallust's interpretation. Okay, so let's then go on to page 16. And we start with this word praeterea. Praeter means above or beyond, and ea means those things. So beyond those things, or the most common English translation is moreover. Okay, and then the subject is corrupti mores, the corrupt morals of the community, civitatis, genitive of civitas, were incitabat, were spurring him on. And we have to imagine an object like eum, or even the name, Catilina. They were stirring or spurring him on. Which, now quos here means which, and it must be referring to the mores, because it is masculine accusative plural. In English, because we don't have cases, we probably have to repeat the word for mores. So morals which, and then our new subject is pessuma ac divorsa inter se mala. Okay, very bad, pessuma, and divorsa inter se, literally diverging between themselves. We might say mutually opposed, and then mala means evils. And then Sallust tells us what the evils are. They are luxuria, extravagance, atque avaritia, and greed. And then the main verb is vexabant, were aggravating, were exacerbating, were making worse. So he's saying that Catiline was encouraged by the fact that the general morality, the general moral situation in Rome was bad. And Sallust says that this moral situation is being made worse by two things in particular, extravagance and greed. And Sallust realizes that it's hard to imagine these two vices existing together in one place. That's why he emphasizes that they are divorsa inter se. They are different between themselves. Because normally, luxury or extravagance would be the opposite of greed, right? Extravagance is where you spend too much, and greed is where you want too much. But Sallust says, no, these both exist together in Rome, right? People spend too much, they're extravagant, and therefore they become greedy, right? The more they spend, the more they want. They want to keep on feeding their money bags, their bank accounts, so they can keep spending more and more. That's the dynamic he's talking about. So these two vices, extravagance and greed, are creating this really immoral atmosphere. And that atmosphere is encouraging Catiline to do the bad things that he's doing. And just notice, by the way, some more rather archaic spellings here. Pessuma instead of pessima, divorsa instead of diversa. So yeah, just worth noting those down. Then let's go on. Sallust says res ipsa, literally the thing itself. And by res, I think Sallust means the subject, the topic of morality and greed and extravagance and so on. The topic itself seems, videtur, to encourage me, hortari, infinitive of hortor, I encourage, deponent verb. And then we have to imagine a word like may as the object. So the subject itself seems to encourage me, since quoniam, the tempus, literally the time, or you could say the occasion, has reminded me, admonuit, and again we imagine may or something, has reminded me de moribus civitatis, about the morals of the community. So Sallust is saying, all this talk about morality reminds me to talk about morality more generally. So he says this subject seems to encourage me to repetere, literally to look back, supra, further or beyond. So to seek further back, to look further back into the past, rather than just a few years to Catiline. He wants to go further back into the Roman past. And paucis, ablative case, with a few things. And we could imagine the word verbis after that, with a few words. It's encouraging me to discuss. So the next infinitive is all the way at the end of the sentence, disserere, to discuss the instituta, the institutions, or you could say the established practices of our ancestors, maiorum, literally of the greater people, of our ancestors, both domi militiaeque, domi meaning at home, that's technically what's called a locative form, and on campaign, or in war, militiae, in the military. So Sallust wants to talk about the established practices at home and on campaign. In what way, quo modo, ablative case, in what way they had the state, habuerint rem publicam. We might say in what way they administered the state or ran the state. And habuerint, by the way, is subjunctive because we're in an indirect question, right? I want to discuss in what way they ran the state. Right? The direct question would be, in what way did they run the state? This is the indirect version of that. And he also wants to know quantamque reliquerent, how great they left it. Right? How great was it when our generation, inherited it? with the result that, ut plus subjunctive, going into a result clause, with the result that gradually, paulatim, in mutata, having been changed, ex pulcherrima atque optima, from the most beautiful and best, from the noblest and best, so let's just go back to ut for a moment. So with the result that having been changed bit by bit, gradually, and then I would actually go to the verb, facta sit, it became from the noblest and best, the worst and most disgraceful, flagitiosissuma. So what Sallust wants to do is he wants to look back at earlier Roman history, look at how it worked, how did they run the state at home, how did they work abroad on campaigns, how did the country change, how did Rome go from being one of the best places to one of the worst, right? That's what Sallust wants to talk about. Again, notice some old-fashioned spellings here. For example, this is one, right? In mutata would later become immutata with a double M. Also optuma instead of optima, pessuma instead of pessima, and flagitiosissuma, right? That U would be an I normally in Sallust's day. Also just notice these two words, atque optuma, they're in sort of brackets, really. And there is a reason for that, which is that the best manuscripts of Sallust that survive to us do not have this phrase in them, right? These two words are missing. They're not in the best manuscripts that we have. However, there are some, so that's an argument for not including them. But there are two particular arguments in favor of including them. One is that when St. Augustine, in his big book, The City of God, quotes this passage, he includes this phrase, atque optima, which might well mean that Augustine had access to an older manuscript of Sallust, which includes this phrase and which we in the 21st century no longer possess, right? There may have been a manuscript which was lost or destroyed at some time between St. Augustine and us today. So that's one argument. Also, Sallust is very fond of arranging pairs of opposite words, opposing words, in a structure called chiasmus, which is where you go A, B, B, A, right? What you've got here is you've got yes, so what you've got here is you've got the two words here, optuma and pessuma, right? These are the opposites, right? Best and worst. And then you've got two other superlatives, pulcherrima and flagitiosissuma. So that's what gives you your ABBA structure. You've got two similar words in the middle, B and B, and then you've got two words on the edges, A and A. So that gives you ABBA overall. We'll talk a bit more in class about chiasmus, but it's a sort of literary device that Sallust quite likes. It gives us a nice balance in the sentence. So that's a reason to think that Sallust might have included atque optuma here. In terms of the IB could include these words in the passage, and they could not include them. So that's why I've put them in the text, so we can learn them, we can know what they mean, and then if in an IB exam they are removed, that's fine, and it won't make a huge amount of difference to the meaning of the text.